what kind of economic systems are best at allowing us to exercise the fact that we are created in the image and likeness of God.
Now keep in mind that if you take tiny steps towards any goal, it's just a matter of when you're going to reach it.
Scarcity is the first lesson of economics. Now, the first lesson of politics is to forget the first lesson of economics.
If you don't provide real, actual value to people in exchange for the money that you're asking for in return, you will lose over time.
We can see the economy as a social web that God has created for people to serve each other with their work.
We have the Word of God that provides for us a foundation for knowledge, for truth, for beauty, for goodness, for dignity and value in human beings. We have the Word of God that provides for us things like this. Ready? Thou shalt not steal.
Ethics on the legitimacy of wealth and entrepreneurship individually. Secondly, postmillennial eschatology, that is, the kingdom of God expands across the earth before Jesus comes back in final judgment. And the link to get those two together is the idea of the pursuit of self-interest leading to widespread economic growth and social transformation.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Christ in Capital, the show that wants to encourage you to love God, love neighbor, and build something. I'm the host, Dustin Johnson, and this is going to be an awesome episode. I know I say that every time, but this one really is. We have an interview with Dr. P. Andrew Sandlin, someone who I've been wanting to get on the show for a really long time. And so this interview is, oh man, just wait. But before we get there, I wanted to provide a little commentary on a video that I made recently. Well, first of all, if you hear rumbling in the background, it's because I am driving. I have a newborn, and so if you want to record a podcast, you really have to just grab whatever time you can. And so that's what that is. I'm using my trusty GarageBand app on my phone, which we talked about in one of our recent episodes. Is a really cool app. Anyways, recently, a couple days ago, I made a video for Christ in Capital, and it was just a little snippet of Elon Musk in his interview with Joe Rogan. And in this interview, Joe Rogan they were talking about the coronavirus and the response about, how should we reopen, should we not reopen, things like that. And Joe Rogan made a comment about, can't we just think about how to do this smartly until we can get a universal basic income, and then we can reopen full-fledged or something like that, something along those lines. And Elon Musk made a comment, and he basically just said, look, it's my opinion that if you want to stay home, you should stay home. If you want to go back out and go back to work, you should do that. And he said, but to all the fools out there, to all those people who think that the economy is this magic horn of plenty, this cornucopia that just magically makes stuff, you need to realize that if you're not out there making stuff does not get made, right? And I think it was a really good insight. It's just a really sharp jab at the people who think that we should continue the lockdown and save people rather than profits. And when they say that, they're really highlighting that they don't understand what economics is. I've said that in a past episode, but it really truly is annoying. Economics, at the ground level, is social. It's people exchanging. It's people interacting with one another, using the skills that they have, right? Their time, their labor, their character traits, whatever they have, to exchange with others, to provide value to others. That's all that an economy is. It's just millions upon millions of exchanges of that. just infinitely, not infinitely, but that's what an economy is. And I think he just put it really, really bluntly, and it was very clear that if we shut down an economy and we can't open back up strategically, and smartly, intelligently, getting back into the whole work thing, you're going to have more death on the other side of economic destruction than you will if we had just let the virus go without doing anything. There is going to be, and I will go on record, there will be more death and destruction from economic malfunction, economic destruction, than there ever will have been with a virus. Just put me on record. And history backs us up. History backs that up. When economic decisions are made willy-nilly, when they're focused at the top, and a whole bunch of bureaucrats at the in the ivory tower, up in the echelons, are making decisions for a wide range of people, it only goes bad. It only can go bad. There's, in this video that Elon Musk, or this little statement that he made, he said, if you just print money, that's not going to solve our problems. And it's true. If your dollar represents a claim to someone else's resources, or a claim to exchange with someone, it's just the lowest common denominator of an exchange of value, right? If you make boats, well, you sell that boat for the lowest common denominator of value, right? You don't trade boats for your groceries, right? And so that's all a dollar is. It's just a claim to the country's gross domestic product. That's what it is at the most essential, most basic level. And so if you have a whole bunch of dollars for an economy that's not producing a single thing, your dollar's worthless. It's not going to buy you anything. And so I just wanted to kind of make that commentary. I want to provide that little insight into why that little snippet of that interview between Elon Musk and Joe Rogan it hit me pretty hard. I actually laughed out loud. I was at home all by myself because I was sick. I had a stomach bug, and my wife had gone to stay with her parents because we weren't sure if it was the coronavirus. It wasn't. I got tested, just FYI. But I was sitting all alone, all by myself, watching this interview, and I just lost it. I was like, yes, this guy knows what he's talking about. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's really good. I actually put a Bible verse up at the top. It was 1 Thessalonians 3:10, which is the one where Paul says, even when I wasn't with you, I gave you this command, that if a man does not work, he shall not eat. And I think that's, it wasn't directly for this situation, but I think it fits. If a man is not working, he not only shall he not eat, but he cannot eat. If men do not work and provide, there is no food to go around. So, and we were made that way. We were made to work. The work was given to us as a command before the fall. It is not a result of the fall. It's a good thing. It wasn't until the fall that work became hard and toil. We toiled to produce fruit and to produce all of this other stuff. Work is supposed to be joyful. It's supposed to be something that we do, that we love, that we pour ourselves into and we find meaning in. That's what work is supposed to be. But we kind of have this allergic reaction to work, and then when situations come around where the government's offering to provide your money, your regular paycheck without you doing anything, people kind of jump on it. I'm not saying that people are deciding not to work. People are legitimately being laid off. But I am saying that once you're in that situation and the government is providing that to you, that makes it a little bit more difficult to get back off of the government dole, so to speak. So this interview that we have today is amazing. We're going to talk about Gnosticism and the how we are made to work, and what we do in the here and now with our careers, with our interests, with our hobbies, with our skills, with all of this stuff that we're doing to create things and make art and to build networks and portfolios and businesses. That is all working towards something, right? It's not going to hell in a handbasket. We are working towards the glorification of God, and when all is said and done and Jesus comes back, that's not the end of your work and the things that you've invested here in the world. They will go on for eternity. And so I hope you guys enjoy this interview. I'm going to go ahead and switch it over, but just think about that. You what you do in the here and now it means something, and it has meaning. So here's our interview with Dr. P. Andrew Sandlin. Enjoy. All right, everybody, the moment you've been waiting for, the moment we've all been waiting for. We have on Dr. P. Andrew Sandlin, who is a Christian minister, cultural theologian, and author, the founder and president of the Center for Cultural Leadership in Coulterville, California, faculty at Blackstone Legal Fellowship of the Alliance Defending Freedom in Phoenix, Arizona, Yong Distinguished Visiting Professor of Culture and Theology at Edinburg Theological Seminary in Pharr, Texas, and core faculty at Evan Runner International Academy for Cultural Leadership of the Ezra Institute for Contemporary Christianity in Grimsby, Ontario. He was formerly president of the National Reform Association and executive vice president of the Chalcedon Foundation. So a heavy hitter, to say the least. I think, Dr. Sandlin, if you want to correct me, the place to go to get most of your, stuff and is the Center for Cultural Leadership.com. Is that correct?
It's actually, very close there, Dustin, and thanks for having me on. It's Christian Culture, written solidly.com, as well as the blog is Doc Sandlin, again, written just as one word, docsandlin.com. And if anybody wants to sign up for the Culture Change Weekly e-newsletter, again, called Culture Change, they can just send me a Facebook private message, or I think they can find that on docsandlin.com too. So, or Facebook, which is a good way to find it.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll link that all that stuff in the show notes so people can get it in touch with you. But so I actually got introduced to you over the years. I started hearing your name every now and then on Apologia Radio, Apologia Studios, all the stuff that they're doing. Saw you. You made an appearance on Next Week with Jeff Durbin, and you also have done a lot of stuff with Dr. Joe Boot with the Ezra Institute, as we just read. But I didn't know that you were formerly involved in the Chalcedon, or I don't know how to pronounce that. Is it Chalcedon or Chalcedon?
Well, actually, it's the original pronunciation is not exactly certain, but it's pronounced there Chalcedon.
Chalcedon.
Yes, I actually was the executive VP there from I think it was mid 90s through early 2000s. Mm-hmm. So that was going back about 25 years or something like that now.
Okay. Well, for the listeners who may not know, all of these organizations that we just kind of highlighted are very culture movers. That the focus is getting Christians into culture, influencing it, rather than being, retreatist and reactive to culture. We need to be leading it, and that's what your website and your whole content portfolio is about at the Center for Cultural Leadership. And when I heard you recently on the Apologia's episodes, you were talking about this thing that has been in the church, subtly and kind of like sneakily for the past long time, Gnosticism. What is that? What is Gnosticism, and how does it show itself to us, in whether it's in a church or in the wider secular culture? Can you just give us a rundown of what it is?
Yeah, a good question. So Gnosticism is actually the oldest Christian heresy. It's also the most pernicious, most dangerous, and most persistent heresy. It has never gone away. It survives even today, as I'll get to in a minute. Gnosticism is actually, I mentioned, the most dangerous heresy because unlike other heresies, for example, Arianism, akin to what we would see today in Jehovah's Witnesses, that is the idea that Jesus Christ is a created being and is an equal to God the Father. Obviously, that's a heresy. But that is an error about a single doctrine, Trinity and Christology. On the other hand, Gnosticism is an entire alien worldview.
Okay.
It is a cosmic fallacy. It's a false interpretation of the entire cosmos. And to describe it, I guess the best way is to say that for Christians, the problem in the world, the root of the main problem in the world, and whatever one's viewpoint, we all recognize there are problems. Even atheists look around and see problems. So where do these problems come from? Well, as Christians, we know the root of the problem is the little three-letter word in English, which is sin. The problem is that man fell. There was no doubt a fall in heaven, a satanic fall, an angelic fall that led Satan to lead the created order, Adam, into sin. The creation, of course, not sinning itself, but under a curse. Well, the Gnostics had a different interpretation. Their problem is their belief is that everything bad derives from creation itself. They believe that there are a number of gods, a gradient of gods, a gradient personal being at the top, and eventually he emanated other beings, and finally, as we came down toward the bottom, there was a god called the Demiurge, and he mistakenly created the physical world, and in rebellion against the, quote, spiritual world, the idealized world, we would say, and that it was evil. And so therefore, for the Gnostics, that's kind of out in the weeds, Dustin, but basically for the Gnostics, the problem is the physical world. The problem is our bodies. The problem is everything that we touch, everything that's tactile, and that the goal of life is to escape the physical world. So all that is physical, and we would say today in the modern world, wealth and beautiful things like the food and legitimate sex and all sorts of things like that, all of these things are evil because they're physical. In the biblical view, salvation is from sin to righteousness on the basis of the blood of Jesus Christ, of course. But in the Gnostic world, salvation is from matter into spirit.
Okay.
And if you'll think about it and think extensively about it, historically, this has infected the church and the culture, by the way, in remarkable ways.
Yep.
It also has a lot of similarities with, and no doubt was influenced by ancient Greek ideas, Platonic ideas. Socrates was sort of that way, but specifically in the Christian church, it's the idea that matter is evil. Now, this, of course, has great implications.
Yep.
When Gnostics read the Old Testament and they saw that it was about a very physical people, the Jews, who were given physical promises of physical seed and land, And therefore, they believed that the God of the Old Testament is this evil creator God, but the God of the New Testament is the one who sent Jesus Christ, and therefore there's a radical disjunction
Right.
between the Old Testament, which is law, and the New Testament, which is gospel. They believe that Jesus only appeared to have a body. He obviously couldn't have an actual physical body, so Jesus was a deceiver in their view.
Oh, wow.
But the reason it's called Gnosticism, of course this comes from gnosis or knowledge, is that they believe that salvation is by a secret knowledge, that Jesus Christ came to give a secret knowledge to an elite, this knowledge that I've just described to you, the nature of the evil of matter, and that their goal was to be rescued. So the Gnostics really long for death, because at death, their anthropology or view of man is that he's sort of we would say like a capsule.
Mm-hmm.
The body is like a prison house, and that at death, your sort of immortal soul, they believed in the pre-existence of souls, Gnostics did, many of them at least, that this soul actually escapes and flies up through the heavenlies, and some of them held that there were battles with evil forces.
Yep, you see it in the movies all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So that is of course, and you can't hold to the fundamentals of the Christian faith. They don't believe in the resurrection, of course. Their view of, if there were any resurrection at all, is sort of a spirit resurrection, or the resurrection of the spirit in man. There could not have been a true death on the cross. So it's obviously a contra-Christian view.
Yeah.
But the way in which Gnosticism has infected even, and I think this is our main concern, Dustin, the more conservative Bible-believing church, though they're not full-fledged Gnostics.
Right.
The way they're influenced is basically it's a diminution of the material.
Yes.
And the physical.
Mm-hmm.
And so the notion that the faith should apply to culture, to economics, and to politics, and to art, and to literature, and to music, these things are at best secondary, and they sort of divert us from what should be our true calling, which is, well, in Roman Catholic circles, it would be the beatific vision, sort of see the visions we would see of Mary and of Christ. And in the Protestant circles, it's spending time in prayer and being close to God and so on,
right,
and not having much to do with the present world. So the Gnostic vision is very world-denying. The historic, I should say, biblical Christian vision is world-affirming. Yes. And I would say, before I close for a minute and let you ask another question if you want, that this division does create two very different kinds of Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
The one who is tinged with Gnosticism, even though Bible believing in general, in a formal sense, will act out his or her faith in a way very different from somebody who understands the lordship of Christ in all of life.
Yes.
That Jesus Christ is Lord of the physical and the non-physical. So that's something to bear in mind.
Yes, and it's, I think you can get into this predicament, or this can kind of bleed into the church's kind of mind today when we think of the Old Testament as like this separate thing. Like I know there's been discussions in the recent past about separating the Old Testament from the New. When you look at the Old Testament, and God's promises are always of, yes, fall, but redemption, and bringing you into the land and inheriting the land, and going into the places, the city, and seeking its welfare. All of this stuff, it's very earthy. It's very get down into the dirt and build and make and create and reflect your Creator in the world. Yes, it's punctuated by judgment, but we've kind of taken that into, our current, mindset and said, okay, yes, we're going towards destruction of the material. The material's bad. Let's do away with that. Let's get to the spiritual stuff. And you hear it. You hear it subtly at like funerals, where it's this person has gone to a better place, and thank goodness they're no longer here on this, corrupt earth. And I mean, there's something to that, but that's not the ultimate thing. The ultimate thing is God's renewing. He has value. He placed value on this earth, and He's in the business of restoring it. And that's something that's like super hopeful. Like it instills in us something that I think, unbelievers don't have, right? Unbelievers are implicitly they have to kind of take a nihilistic view at the end of the day, unless they're in some other cult or religion or something. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's all correct. I think a lot of people don't understand, Dustin, that there is in the Bible remarkable continuity between this world and the world of the resurrection. The Bible speaks of the new heavens and the new earth.
Yes.
It doesn't mean sort of what we would say brand new. It means a new phase. It's sort of like the Bible uses the term the new moon. Well, that doesn't mean God creates a new physical moon. It means it's a new phase.
Mm-hmm.
We read about this in Revelation 21. The Bible never teaches that when we die, we go to heaven. It does say that the spirit at death goes to the Lord.
Right.
But man was created to be in the totality of his being. And the Scripture doesn't say that in the eternal state that we all sort of go up to heaven. It says the opposite.
Right.
It says the New Jerusalem and the heavens come down to earth.
Right.
Sort of we might say a resurrected earth, a renovated earth. But we will, people don't understand, sadly, tragically, many Christians don't understand that this earth that we are presently on is the same earth we will be on eternally. Now,
Yes.
It will be renovated. It will be purged of sin. But God's not going to sort of throw this out, past Jupiter or Saturn or something and start anew. This is the earth that will be renovated. I love a line that I think Al Wolters said years ago, or someone, maybe it wasn't him, he made the great point. God doesn't create junk, and he doesn't junk what he creates.
Yep.
The creation was very good, and he's not going to junk it. He's going to redeem it, and that's what he's in the process of doing right now. You mentioned funerals. One of the great tragedies, and particularly in the 20th century, is the notion person has trusted Christ, and here's the decedent, and the minister will say, oh, so-and-so has gone on to be in a better place and gone on to heaven, and that is their blessed hope. But actually it's not. The hope is that we'll be with the Lord, with God and with all the saints on a resurrected earth.
Yes.
In eternity. So it's not simply that sort of our disembodied spirits are flying off somewhere eternally. It's that we are serving the Lord in the totality of our being. Again, another real problem Christians have, they don't understand, I think, that a disembodied individual is not a full person. Now, we can exist without a body, but it's not an ideal existence by any means.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Paul pointed out he didn't want that in Corinthians. He says he thought that was a rather horrific state. He says, I want to be clothed upon. I want to be covered. And so the notion that the body is somehow inherently bad and that the wonderful thing about heaven will be that we will shed the body and the material is really a Gnostic heresy. It's not Christian truth at all.
Right. And again, you do see it like in the popular movies where the guy, the cartoons where the little cartoon theoretically dies and goes up to the floaty cloud place, and they've got the harps and the babies with wings, and that's not what that was never the intention.
That vision is much more medieval Roman Catholic vision, and it was wrong.
Yep.
Even though many Protestants sadly hold it today, that we sort of fly along in the heavenlies and playing harps and have little halos, Yeah, there's nothing biblical in all that. The biblical eschatology from beginning to end is very earthy. It's about the recovery of creation itself. Salvation is not an escape from creation. Salvation is a purging and renovation of creation, beginning with man himself.
Awesome. So, Dr. Sandlin, considering all of this, and considering that we're the earth is on its way to renewal and resurrection, what we do here now, in our careers, in our hobbies, our side projects, just the things that we do to earn money or just in the economic sense, how should we as Christians be thinking about that? Should we be thinking about our careers as, being continued in the resurrection when Jesus comes back and hands the kingdom over to the Father? And, what's the kind of continuation point? Is there going to be a punctuated glorification at that point, and then we continue on with our work? How should we, correctly think about that kind of thing?
That's a very insightful and shrewd question. I wish more Christians would ask it, but yeah, that's good. Yes, there will be a punctuated glorification at the resurrection and the final day, but that doesn't in any way negate, in general, the continuation of vocation. Here's a fundamental point to understand. Work, we of course today might call it vocation, but simply work is not a result of the fall.
Right.
Had there never been a fall, we'd all still be working. In the parlance of today, we'd all still be, quote, getting up to go to work in one way or another. All that the fall added to, of course, for the male, women too, the work is the difficulty of fulfilling this cultural mandate of working hard to steward the earth. But these various vocations, though specifically perhaps not every one of them will continue on, nonetheless the idea of vocation will. For instance, vocations that would be used specifically to deal with sin, like, for instance, a judge or a police officer, or certainly an undertaker. Mm-hmm. Those specific vocations wouldn't continue.
Yeah.
But the vocation of cultivating the earth, and in my view, the cultivation of various technologies, including digital technologies and things that may even follow that, and the food production. The Bible doesn't indicate that there will not be food in the eternal state. Now, we can't get very specific because actually the Bible doesn't say a lot about what the eternal state will be like. But nonetheless, what we're doing right now is building for eternity, culturally for eternity. I don't mean by that we're getting more people converted and their souls will go to heaven when they die, and in that sense there's continuity. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
It is certainly true that people need to be converted and we need to preach the gospel to them so that they'll be saved by Christ's blood and resurrection. But what I'm saying culturally is that there is cultural continuity between what we're doing now. So if today you're writing code for a living, or if today you're selling automobiles for a living, or if today you're being a nurse and actually helping people in some way, though there won't not be illness, helping people, assisting them in all of these ways and many others, you're actually building right now for something that's going to continue on into eternity. So there is inestimable value to the culture to the cultural work that we do today, because it will move on into eternity.
Right. That's such a. It makes you want to actually. Like what we're doing here is not just I'm gonna try to see what I can do, while we're here, but it's all going to hell in a basket anyway. It's I can invest in the world. I can actually build a legacy and leave it to my children and have them, raise them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, and see that the fruits of that investment, grow all the way to the resurrection and past that. And I think we should be thinking about it that way, honestly.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. We're investing for the future. I want to mention one other real problem with respect to this, Dustin, briefly, where Gnosticism has infected the church, mm-hmm. and that is with the notion that if one is to do the greatest work for the Lord, he needs to be in, quote, full-time Christian ministry. You'll often hear that. Well, if you really love the Lord, then you need to be a senior pastor or a youth pastor, right, or maybe teach in a Christian school or be a missionary. All of those are great things. I've been some of those things, and thank God for it. But I think it's important to understand that the man who comes and picks up the refuse in front of my house every week, if he is a Christian man and is doing it for the Lord's glory, is doing a job no less important than the job that I do when I'm preaching and teaching and lecturing. Awesome. There's no calling higher than another. There's a real test. Here's a little way to test this. Perhaps you've heard, Dustin, people say, well, so-and-so surrendered his life to the ministry. I'm waiting for, and everybody claps. Everybody's very happy. Oh, it's a wonderful thing. He was going to write code for a living, but he surrendered to the ministry. I'm waiting for the day when somebody says, I'm surrendering my life to be an investment advisor, and people clap, rather than say, well, wait, no, you don't surrender your life to do that. But actually, according to the Word of God, if you're doing it for the Lord's glory and to extend His kingdom, you are.
Yes.
And they're all equally important.
Yes. That reminds me, I think your you're pretty good friends with David Bahnsen, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
You know, the Bible tells us that if we're great at what we do, we're skilled in our craft, we'll stand before kings. And he's super good at what he does.
Yes.
And he's a mutual fund manager or something like that.
Wealth management, yeah.
Yep, and he just recently put out or he's helping with a lawsuit against Gavin Newsom or something like that, I think.
That's right. That's right.
And he has the clout and the influence to do that. But, yeah, man, this is so refreshing. You know, I grew up in kind of a, fundamental kind of background, and so that was kind of my roots. And just to understand that what you're doing here now matters, and what Christ did in his death, burial, and resurrection did something more than just kind of, I think you've said it before, it does more than just reconcile me vertically with God. It works its way out in the world. It's going out, and it's taking over the world, and someday maybe even Mars and the cosmos,
That's right. That's right.
And so we have something to look forward to. And so as we kind of, take that backdrop and we're working in our careers, I hope that encourages people to put their all into it, to be the best, trash man that they can be, or to be the best computer programmer or financier or whatever.
That's right.
And ultimately that builds culture. It builds culture, and it's going to glorify God ultimately in the end.
Yeah, that's right. I think a lot of people go wrong there because, and I mentioned earlier, I was kind of hinting there in Genesis 1 about the command to take dominion in the earth. That's historically been called the cultural mandate.
Mm-hmm.
We need to step back and think about the implications of that. Why did God create man? Well, it's true, as the Westminster Catechism said, man's chief end is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. That is the vertical responsibility, which is central. But the horizontal responsibility of man is the one mentioned there in Genesis chapter 1. I mean, why is man here on the earth? To cultivate the earth culturally. There we see those first four letters in English. It's a religious expression.
Yes.
Cult, C-U-L-T, not member of a cult, but it's the religious idea, cultivating a culture.
Right.
So in everything that we do, as you mentioned, in writing code or in chopping down trees, working in the lumber industry, or whether you're selling automobiles or serving in a restaurant or whatever the case may be, if it can legitimately be done for the glory of God, that's fulfilling the cultural mandate and therefore doing exactly what God called us to do. It's interesting, reading there in Genesis 1, the Bible does not say that God called us specifically, you need to get ready for heaven.
Right.
The thing is, if we live a life that's surrendered to God and Jesus Christ and his death and obedience to him, we are getting ready for heaven. We're getting ready for a heaven on earth,
right,
as the Bible says in Revelation chapter 21. So that is our key responsibility horizontally. First, vertically, loving God with all of our heart, loving him, enjoying him forever, but vertically, but horizontally, moving outward, is to steward the earth for his glory, and that means cultivating our society.
Right. That's awesome. So I have, I know we're running up on time, so I have one more question, and it's actually two parts. First, will I, when in the resurrection, I still have a career where I'm building, a business or whatever. Will I be able to take a weekend vacation to the Florida Keys with a fishing pole in one hand and a beer in the other? Can I do that?
Yeah, I think you probably will. I mean, let's think about this for a minute. I think it was C.S. Lewis that pointed out something that a lot of Christians don't consider. There is too much capacity for pleasure in the world as it was created for God to have not created the world for man to enjoy.
Exactly.
The fact that he gave us senses and gave us such robust senses and such a beauty in the world. And we see it even now. Think about it. We see the world in its beauty, and it's still under a curse. Imagine what it's going to look like. Imagine the size of the fish, the effectiveness of the fishing pole, the taste of the beer.
Romans 1 says the earth groans for the revealing of the sons of God. That there's anticipation.
The anticipate, exactly. I tell people sometimes, Dustin, I live out in the West in a very quiet area. Sometimes as I walk around, I hear almost the earth itself quaking and moving a little. Things are very quiet.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost as though I wonder if that's the earth itself groaning, waiting to be completely liberated from the earth. Of course, creation itself didn't sin, but because it's aligned so closely with the fortunes of man, it bears the curse. When that curse is removed, what it'll be like. So, yes, the notion that we're all just going to be flying around, or the notion that we'll be singing the whole time, well, I mean, we don't sing all the whole time now. I'm sure we'll sing then, praises to God.
Right.
But enjoy, and this is the key, in enjoying creation properly, we are praising God. In enjoying creation properly, we are praising God. And that's why, according to Romans 1, you mentioned, that's why idolatry is such a terrible thing. Because we've taken what God intends for us to enjoy, to look to Him, and of course make it an end in itself. That's why this idolatry and the worship of creation is evil. It's not meant to be worshipped, but it is meant to be enjoyed. And therefore, we worship God as a result of this enjoyment that we have in His creation.
Oh, so good. So the last part of the question was, what will you be doing? What will people find you doing in the resurrection?
I don't know, but I'll tell you one thing. I love preaching, teaching, lecturing, and writing. And though it won't be in a gospel context, I do believe it'll be in a God-glorifying context. So who knows? Maybe I don't know what the technology will be like. Maybe there'll be a kind of reading or digital communication or some kind of communication to people almost instantaneously. Maybe have a group of people around me just talking to them about some of the great truths of the greatness of God, the greatness of the redemption that we've all experienced at the time. Who knows? But I would love to do that. But you really have pointed out something very important here, Dustin, and that is God puts these desires into our hearts and gives us abilities. These things are not evil. I'm not talking about sin. Apart from sin, the things we do well, the things that we enjoy doing, apart from sin, I believe God put them there, and therefore He intends for us to do them throughout eternity.
Awesome. Man, anyone who's listening to this who doesn't want to just get up and start doing something, I think there's something wrong. We gotta get you. I don't know, something.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Sandlin. This has been one of my favorite episodes. I know we're running late on time a little bit. Where would you like people to go? Again, one more time to get you and the bulk of your content.
I think. For those that are on Facebook, please just send me try to friend me on Facebook. You can go to ChristianCulture.com. That's written as one word, or DocSandlin.com. And then you can also sign up for my Christian Culture Change. Oh, I should mention, I forgot this earlier. Thank you for reminding me. You can go to iTunes and get all the sermons, all the podcasts. I've got a youth podcast called Lordship Life, lectures and things like that. So I think the best way, if you just Google my name, you'll see what some of the bad people say about me, but you'll also see some good stuff. So you can find it. You can find stuff there too.
Awesome. Okay, great. And I'll try to tag a lot of that stuff in the show notes so people can direct link to it. So, well,
that'll be great.
Well, thank you everybody for joining. Like I say all the time, go subscribe to the podcast. Get in touch with Dr. Sandlin and a lot of his work. It's been super influential on me, and I know it will be for you as well. But until we get you guys again here on the podcast, we always want to encourage you to go and love God, love neighbor, and build something. See you guys later. Bye.